This week on Untold Facts, we'll be breaking down the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act and why such a violent law exists in Nigeria. My name is Kiki Mordi. January 7th, 2014, the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act was passed into law by President Goodluck Jonathan in Nigeria. And despite international pressure, this law has continued to hold ground, criminalizing activities of the LGBTQIA+ community. Today, we'll be speaking with Timinepre Cole. She is a legal practitioner, a writer, and whose prose has appeared in Writer Space Africa, the Republic Journal, and the Ruston Times. Thank you so much for coming here today. And of course, I have Abayomi Aka. He is a lawyer, a human rights activist, currently the executive director of International Center for Advocacy on Right to Health. Thank you so much for coming here.
So glad to be here. Thank you.
Yes, so we're going to be tearing apart the SSMPA. And the first thing people need to know is, what is this law and why was the need for this law to exist in the first place?
Okay, so let me take it from the last thing you said. This law didn't need to exist, first. But basically, the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act was enacted basically to, regulate, criminalize affairs of same-sex persons in Nigeria, specifically members of the LGBTI community, banning any form of association, any form of marriage, civil union, or any kind of association thereabout, and a whole lot more, but just in a summary, that's it.
But I mean, it's crazy. This is not some ancient law. This is something that came into existence just in 2014. What were the activities that led to informing the president at the time to pass such a law?
Personally, I don't think there was anything that prompted this law, because before the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act was enacted, it's not like queer persons were lining up to get married or actually filling the court registries and advocating for marriages and all of that, even though they should have. But so I just believe this act was something that was done basically just to criminalize the existence of queer people. But before this law was enacted, there were actually other laws in place that criminalized the existence of queer people. There was the criminal code. I think there were sections in the criminal code that criminalized having sex.
Carnal knowledge of persons of same sex.
Of same sex, unnatural, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And then the penal code as well criminalized having carnal knowledge against the order of nature. And then the Sharia law as well, for states that are bound by the Sharia law, goes as far as criminalizing the gender expression of trans persons, because it describes a man who puts on a female outfit in public and everything, describes them as vagabonds, and then puts a criminal sentence on that. And then there are certain sections in the Sharia code that defines what a lesbian is and then criminalizes lesbianism and all of that. So these laws were in place before the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act. So there really was no need for the Same-Sex Prohibition Act, but it just further, should I say, criminalized what was already.
I mean, it's interesting that she mentions Sharia, because a lot of the language used in the law sounds very religious. Would you say that religion sort of informed why this law exists in the first place, amongst other laws?
Okay, so I think Nigeria is highly religious in nature.
Okay.
And to a certain extent, everything that they do, they always try to either put morals, culture, or religion to actually use it as a means to justify whatever stupidity that they want to play on. And I think the Jonathan regime literally fell hook, line, and sinker for that, thinking that they would be popular, but then it reverses the case. They signed into a law that criminalized affairs of persons, even in their private homes and private affairs.
Yeah.
And I think, largely to a certain extent, because the Christian Association of Nigeria spoke about it, praised Jonathan when this law was eventually signed. And I think I had, if I'm correct, people from the Islamic community as well to also
messages.
Yes, commiserated with the government at that time that they signed a law that was criminalizing same-sex persons.
Okay.
And just to add to what she said, this bill particularly had already was supposed to have been enacted into law since 2006. Then it was called the Same-Sex Bill.
Okay.
And it tried, went into the House, but it fell through.
Okay.
Then came back 2008 again, fell through. Then came 2011, fell through. Then 2014.
And then President Jonathan was the one that bailed the cat.
The not so knowledgeable person who decided to pass a law that invades people's privacy and all.
I mean, what does this mean for a person, you know, that is part of the LGBT community? Does this mean that they're not allowed to leave? How does this work?
It's more like a split end, meaning that you are literally creating people with split personalities. You can leave, but they're telling you cannot leave to the fullest extent of your life. Meaning you cannot freely associate with persons who are of same sex. You cannot freely, you know, go out with your partner on the street, you know, be amorous with your partner or even anybody, so to speak.
Yes.
It means you're not allowed in certain places of worship. It means that you cannot form certain associations that would literally aid your well-being or the social development of persons within your class of...
which is also a human right.
Yes, which is also a human right. So it goes a long way. And
so it's basically human rights abuse?
Definitely, of the fullest extent. Because apart from right to life, the right to privacy, freedom to associate, and a few other things are very fundamental. That's why it's called fundamental human rights.
Yes.
Under the UNDHR, that's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. There's so many principles of rights enshrined within that document, but Nigeria specifically picks this, and literally all over the world, these are the most important rights that exist, that if you find anywhere, even though we know that rights are universal in its nature, you can walk anywhere in any jurisdiction and your rights will still be respected. But when you talk stricter sense about the contents of each law, talking about fundamental principles of human rights, in all over the world, basically, these are the most common sections of the principle that you find. And that you see in Nigeria, we're breaking this, it literally negates and is contradictory to the Chapter 4 of our fundamental rights in the Constitution.
I mean, and it's ridiculous. With the media blackout, you think that no one is trying to protest or no one has been trying to protest. It just looks like the whole of Nigeria is happy and they've accepted the bill. But like, is that the true reality?
Definitely not. I know at the point where the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act was enacted or was signed into law, there were protests all over. Like, I remember some Nigerians in Canada actually protested. And then even recently, I think early this year, there was a huge media protest by some queer Nigerians on Twitter. They trended the hashtag End Homophobia in Nigeria. And people keep protesting. Like, it's not as if even heterosexual persons actually sometimes lend their voices, and it's not like people are happy with the law. And I think reports show that now people are actually more against the law than before. Yes. So it goes to show that people are actually protesting against these things. People are not in support of these things, but I don't know why the government is not listening. I don't know why they feel this is a law that needs to be in place, because the people who actually live in the country and who these laws are made for do not want this law.
It's not a representative of what they want.
Exactly.
Why do you think that people are now more accepting towards the community?
I think people really, I think maybe when it hits close to home, they feel the need to now open their minds, and when they find out that, okay, people in my church, people in my area, people I go to work with, people I go to school with, my brother, my cousin, someone I live with, they're queer, and their existence really does nothing to me. It shows them that, okay, maybe this thing is not as so big a deal as people are making it seem. Like, these people are really just out here living their lives, and they just want basic rights that are accorded to every individual in society. So why should we deny them this? So,
I mean, sorry to add to what she said. Basically, for me, I think initially people were in denial that queer persons existed in Nigeria.
Okay, good.
And to the extent that I think in 2018 or 2007, when Obasanjo was at an international human rights forum, where he blatantly said that queer persons do not exist in Nigeria.
Oh dear.
That kind of brought out an outroar where you had activists coming out to, say, no, we exist, we're alive. During the public reading, we had persons from the civil society organizations who came out to talk about these issues, the likes of Otibo, Dr. Otibo, the likes of Akudo, and a few other, Dorothy, Olumide, lots of them, they came out to talk about these issues and make representation at the National Assembly during the open speech. But I think what is more important now is the fact that people are no longer afraid.
Yes.
People are bold enough to come out to talk about these issues. I'm from a different generation. My generation would never, even till now, talk about issues of sexuality and how they're queer, or even, basically things like that. But this millennials, sorry to use the word, they are very open about their affairs. They're bold to talk about their issues. They, use the social media to actually express themselves on these issues. And civil society organizations also, with the likes of Tears, Ika, Where, and a few other organizations who have, endlessly been in the back, ensuring that this is existing, lending voices to people who cannot, or people who would like to ordinarily express themselves but cannot express themselves, giving them a platform to be able to talk and speak in this forum. And I think that kind of visibility brings the human face to the issue, allows people to see that these people are human beings. They bleed red. They have the same issues that you have. That it's like intersectional issues that cut across everybody, and it has nothing to do with sexuality. So I think people are more accepting now, based on those reasons.
All right. I mean, we know what the law says, and that can be really hectic. It more or less criminalizes the lived experiences of people in the LGBT community. But as a human rights lawyer, as an activist, using the legal means, using law to advocate, is there any wiggle room? Where does this leave you? Are your hands tied completely, or?
No, there's so many exceptions to the rule.
Okay.
I think for each case, there's always a hybrid situation in every instance. So the commonality or the common issue is always the person's sexuality. But then, what is the reason for arresting or holding this person, or deciding to want to even take this person to court?
Okay.
Those are the things that you look at, the facts that lead up to that matter. In some instances, they catch you probably maybe having sex with someone in your room. The question is, how did they get to find out that was going on if you didn't invade on someone's privacy?
Okay.
Another instance where you have this perceived notion that this person is gay, and because of that, you go call the police and you say, oh, I know the common story is, I they only see man for in house. I know they see woman. Or in the case of a lesbian woman, you hear, and only woman she they carry. Most of them, they behave like man, and all those things like that. Those are some of the loopholes where, as a legal practitioner, you can use to actually, win cases like that. But half the time, most of the most prominent cases that we have nothing to do with people directly being accused of sexual affairs or things like that, but more like the case of the 57 boys who were arrested.
Yes.
They were the so-called government, or I don't know, public prosecutor, dumb in their sense. I'm sorry, I'm going to be a bit insulting because I'm just thinking, how can human beings, adults with cognitive reasoning, follow things like this? They had no specific charge against these boys. They claimed that they were being charged under the anti-cult law, but no, still yet, till now, I don't know if I'm wrong, I stand to be corrected, they have not produced a charge sheet against these boys. And I'm wondering, why is this court case still going on? So those are some of the loopholes where they do not find evidence that are directly leading to either section. I think, is it 217 or 47 of the criminal code, and then the penal code 214, and then a few other, and even specifically the Same-Sex Prohibition Act. The only thing it says, even it's still a loophole, when it says association of persons of same sex. So many exceptions to the law that you as a legal practitioner, as an activist, or somebody who is fighting for rights of LGBT persons can always rely on.
Do you know of some of the laws that don't exist, but people think they exist?
when you say some of the laws that exist,
no, that don't exist, you know, sometimes people think it's illegal to wear makeup as a man, for example, but that's not a law that exists.
No. So if we are going to specifically detail what is in the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act, there's prohibition of same-sex marriage or civil union.
Civil union.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then there is the prohibition of gathering and forming organizations that promote same-sex acts and gay organizations practically. And then then there is a prohibition of anyone showing support or so persons will show support to same-sex persons or people who identify as same-sex persons or support any form of civil union between same-sex persons or marriage between same-sex persons. There's a prohibition against that as well. And then there's also a prohibition against showing of
amorous relationships between persons of same sex in public.
So
how do you simply define that?
That is actually quite stupid because you find that gives room for even platonic friends to be just born up and harassed.
There have been cases like that.
Yeah, because the way everything works, nobody knows what a queer person looks like. Queer people don't write queer on their faces or gay or this on their faces. So all of it is just based on stereotypes and all of that. So they see two men holding hands. Maybe they feel like one looks effeminate and the other one looks masculine, and they say, oh, okay, maybe something is going on there. But in reality, those could just be two friends, like being affectionate as friends are supposed to be. But that is criminalized there in the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act. And then it goes further to define what a civil union is and what a marriage is. And the definition given for civil union is so vague and so broad as well that it even means that people who live together as friends can now be assumed to be in a civil union. Yes, so it's weird.
I mean, Nigeria has this long history of human rights abuses. When they're not abusing minority groups, they're abusing lower class Nigerians. It's just this horrible history. Can we draw a straight line for our history of human rights abuse to a law existing criminalizing same-sex marriage?
I can't be specific now, but then I think most of the issues that have led to the enactment of laws like that have had to do with, public perception and, I think to a certain extent sometimes targeted missions.
Yes.
When you're trying to target a certain population or a certain group of persons, or using politics to, take advantage of the general public because you're trying to reach people or certain powers that be. I think in that regard, yes, we can. But in other instances, I don't think there is. But just to add, one thing that I know for sure is in existence with all of the laws that exist is the fact that being queer as an individual is not a law that exists. It's not a law that that is enacted or is documented in any of the documents. One thing, I think that's the one thing that people make a mistake about.
Yeah.
Even in the history of all the laws that exist, from the Penal Code Act to the Criminal Code Act to the Sharia law, even to the current Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act, there is no one law that talks about you being gay as an individual, because sexuality is beyond the sexual play or the sexual practice.
Yes.
It's more to do with the innate individual, how you feel, who you innately express unending emotions for, and things like that, but there's nowhere in those sections of the law. But in terms of history and looking at issues to do with human rights in Nigeria regarding same-sex persons, I think there's still hope yet, and I think this just right here is one of the steps that we're taking to ensure that.
Okay.
If I may add, I think laws in Nigeria generally are exclusionary. Yeah. Like they are made specifically to cater to Nigerian men, if I would say that. So you have cases where, and you know how they say laws are supposed to be a reflection of the society.
Yeah.
Yes.
But Nigerian laws are never that.
Okay.
So you have a situation where a whole bunch of persons living in this society are excluded from the laws that they make, or they make laws without thinking of these other persons existing in society. So there are laws excluding women, there are laws excluding queer persons, there are laws excluding non-binary folks,
minority groups.
Basically, like if you are not a majority,
if you're not a man.
Thank you.
Simply
That's
put.
the word. So if you're not a man, like you are basically begging for scraps and fighting every day for your rights to be respected, or for you to be seen, or for you to be heard, and for you to be valued and accorded basic decency that is expected of people.
So the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act, how can we repeal it? Is there hope?
So I'm going to speak as a lawyer, because I think one of the things courts can actually do is to modify laws that have actually been enacted by way of interpretation, which is what I hope would happen with the Egbeda 57 case. I hope when these suits get to court, the judge is actually someone who is reasonable enough, someone who is sensible enough to see that, okay, this thing doesn't make sense, and give an interpretation to this act that actually shows that this law is illegal, because the act in itself is illegal. It's a breach of the fundamental rights of human beings that have been enshrined in the Constitution. And the Constitution is the ground norm. Any act that is inconsistent or irregular with the Constitution should not be in place. So if they can see, or if they can come to the conclusion that this law violates the right to privacy, the right to dignity of the person, the right to freedom of expression, the right to association, and all of that, then we can actually make headway.
Yeah, so she's giving you the legal angle. I'm going to give you the activist angle. Oh, there is a whole lot of hope. There is hope everywhere, because what every individual is an advocate for change. Every individual is somebody who can provide information to the next person, to the next person, to the next person. I'll give a very short experience that I had, I think about 20 years back, right after the law was enacted. So this was what happened. I went to, because part of the work that I did then had involved persons who inject drugs, and injecting drug users and non-injecting drug users. So we had to go into nook and crannies to find people who injected drugs, teach them about risk reduction, and educate them on how to take care of themselves better. So I was in this space. It was around like 8:30 in the night, like this garage, and I was slightly apprehensive about my safety, but at the end of the day, that's the work.
Yes.
And then I got there, and these guys were sitting on each other, and somewhere over there smoking, drinking, and talking. So we're having a conversation. My colleague and I were having a conversation with one person we were able to identify. In instances like this, where you're not a drug user, or you don't align with what the majority of the people are aligning to, you look like the outsider. So we found one person who was willing to talk to us and, get to know every other person in the space. And they brought up this issue. I think along the lines of 2014. And then they brought up this issue about, how this law is so good, how they need to teach all those homosexuals and show them pepe. And then the guy sitting down, despite the fact that I was shivering and I was scared, I just said, but bro, you know that yourself, as you sit on top of this guy's leg, we fit carry you. Now to just carry phone, call police, say we don't see two people where they sit down top, they do.
Sure.
The guy said, who tell you so? I said, then you've not read the law. All you people just know is the marriage that you see. And you think, same-sex, marriage, prohibition, act, same-sex, destroy, criminalize. That's all you people hear, but you don't know the other intricacies that are in between. And I literally kind of like gave an advocacy information to them and sensitized them on how these laws can affect people, not just queer persons, but also straight people, or would I say heterosexual people alike. And like I go back to say, there is a whole lot of hope. Organizations right now, especially in Nigeria, are getting bolder, and that is an amazing thing. Yes. Taking advantage of every situation to bring this word out there, showing people that there are human beings who identify as queer. More importantly, using the social media as a platform to reach a multitude of persons. Because at the end of the day, when you use your social media right, you're not just reaching persons nationally, you're reaching persons around the globe, because it's the World Wide Web. A lot of advocacy, continuous education. I always say, education is never ending. Even for the person who knows. I'm sitting here, and I probably could have said something that is wrong to the audience, of somebody be like, no, that guy is wrong, you probably get it. It's because education is not ending. It's continuous. You keep That's why you read, you get to secondary school, you finish, you go to university, you finish, then the over people will do masters twice, and you know, all this kind of thing. So we need to give continuous education.
Yeah.
We need to be able to use every platform to sensitize people.
All right, thank you so much. That was really powerful. Before we wrap up, do you have any resources to share that people need to be aware of when it comes to looking for, you know, help as a queer person?
Okay, so it's only natural that I start with myself. Okay, so at ICA, we run an OSS and a human rights unit where we provide services to sexual minorities, specifically men who have sex with men, lesbian women, sex workers, and a few unaffected partners. And some of the resources that we have is our platform, IG Instagram at ICA_NG.
Okay.
We have our toll-free line, which is 0800 call ICA.
Okay.
We also have a psychologist line, which is 0800 therapy.
Okay.
And our Twitter account, also ICA@_NG.
Okay.
And I know Tears also has a platform that has like that 0800, I think, call Tears. And I think they also have a hotline for human rights issues and an email that you can also access them on. So there are a lot.
Yeah, for Tears, in cases where your rights are being violated by state actors, they have resources for queer persons, free therapy. They can connect you to lawyers in case your rights are being violated. I think they are currently the ones handling the Ekbeda 57 case. So these are, and then free medical tests and all of that for queer persons as well. So these are a few resources. And also there's a lot of information on the websites. Like if you need to find a community and all of that, there's information about that on the TEARS website. And they actually put out this journal every year documenting cases of abuse against queer persons and everything. So it gets out there and people are informed of what the situation is with the LGBTQ Nigerians. Yeah,
just to add, I think TEARS is doing an amazing job in terms of audio visuals which are being churned out within using the social media platform. Because within the space of 5 to 6 years, they've churned out so much content from the Veil of Silence to everything in between to Hell or High Water to Untold Facts and a few other, and I think chapter 4, which is on the radio right now. So I think they're doing an amazing job at putting the word out there.
Yeah, they are. And it's very important that the word keeps going out there because a violent law like a Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act should not exist in a country that claims to respect human rights. Because laws like that are what lead to violations of young Nigerians like the Ekbeda 57 young individuals going out to have a good time, being criminalized and arrested by their own government. This is Untold Facts. My name is Kiki Mordi. Thank you for watching.